My final assessment for BCM 312, Animal-Human Technology, examines the moral evolution of the film Blade Runner, Director's Cut, so-called Monsters, Rick Deckard and Roy Batty, via their transgressions and inversions. Monsters perform important work for us as individuals and communities, policing our boundaries, defining our norms, through their inversions and transgressions. This quote captures one of the messages of Ridley Scott's dystopian sci-fi film, Blade Runner, Director's Cut. Its dominating themes of mortality, identity, and the destructive roles of science and technology are conveyed through the story of two male antagonists. The biogenetically engineered rebel replicant Roy Batty and the state-licensed bounty hunter charged with retiring him, Rick Deckard. As their adversarial contest escalates, between them, Batty and Deckard commit numerous transgressions. The scenes of dishonor, betrayal, lying, rape, and murder, which render them monsters. They descend into a moral abyss, until their search for meaning creates a deeper self-awareness and they undergo inversions, reversals in beliefs and behaviors, that demonstrate to us that the performance of merciful acts can redeem a previous loss of humanity. Blade Runner features much religious symbolism. The film's opening scenes present us with a futuristic world decaying through pollution and climate change. Los Angeles 2019 resembles the hell of Dante's Inferno, surrounded by eternal night, pierced with the spurting fire of omnipresent industrialization. The haunting soundtrack conveys that Judgment Day is coming. This points to the relevance of analyzing the main character's transgressions and inversion from the biblical perspective of the Ten Commandments and the cardinal sins and virtues. You shall not kill. The Christian Bible's sixth commandment lies at the very heart of most civilization. To kill is society's worst sin. In this, both Batty and Deckard are transgressors. They are both murderers. The rebellious dying replicant Batty is a slave, destroying his oppressors in his quest for longevity and freedom. Deckard is an ordinary, but reluctant man with a repugnant job to retire the replicants and thus protect humanity from Batty and the other renegades who would disrupt and endanger the socio-political order, even though this is morally corrupt and unjust. Batty and the other replicants have killed to escape the off-world colony where they are enslaved. They come to Earth seeking a solution to increase their genetically programmed 4-year lifespan. As part of this campaign, Batty breaks the 9th commandment. You shall not bear false witness. Batty lies and cons genetic designer J.F. Sebastian to deceive Dr. Eldon Tyrell, CEO of the corporation that created the replicants, to gain access to Tyrell's headquarters. The vampiric-looking dwelling Tyrell lives atop his company's giant pyramid-like building, which dominates the Los Angeles skyline. When Batty breaks into Tyrell's palace, seeking answers to his longevity, the film's biblical references reappear. Tyrell refers to Batty as the prodigal son. Batty appeals to Tyrell, "Can the maker repair what he makes?" and "I want more life, father." During this encounter, Batty symbolically breaks the 5th commandment, "Honor your father and your mother," which then causes him to break the 6th commandment, "You shall not kill." Tyrell says about the replicants he creates, "Commerce is our goal. More human than human is our motto." Tyrell lives like a god, but is a monumental transgressor. He is an evil monster, a man without redemption. He commodifies artificial humans for exploitation and profit. Tyrell and his vast corporation fit Marx description of monstrous capital as dead labor, which, vampire-like, lives only by sucking living labor. His scientific, technological, and industrial endeavors in pursuit of an unrestrained wealth and power have resulted in his corporation's control of a dysfunctional society and a doomed planet. Unrepentant, he has little sympathy for Betty's plight. When Tyrell rejects Betty's pleas for longevity, Betty's increasing personal crisis plunges him into chaos. He gives his so-called father the kiss of death in a reference to Judas betraying Jesus. Lost, confused, aimless, without hope, seeing that he has nothing else to lose in a world that wants him dead, Betty brutally murders Tyrell, once again breaking the sixth commandment. The foundation of all his other transgressions is Betty's breaking of the 10th commandment. You shall not covet. This offense can drive the transgressor to commit all the other sins of dishonor, lying, betrayal, and murder. Every monster is a double narrative, two living stories, one that describes how the monster came to be, and another its testimony detailing what cultural use the monster serves. The artificial human Betty has been designed to be more human than human. A military slave for use in the off-world colonies, denied what all humans want: long life, freedom, and self-determination. Betty has grossly sinned in pursuit of these desires, but despite his transgressions, we cannot totally condemn him. Rather, we empathize with his plight and are prepared to forgive his crimes against a society where replicants are considered disposable, not worthy for moral consideration. Maybe I'm a monster, but I don't think I'll know if I were one. Betty does not regard himself as a monster. This is evident when he excuses his actions to Tyrell. I have done questionable things. Or are we perhaps witnessing some slight inversion expressed through his self-doubt? Culture gives birth to the monster before our eyes. What, if any, circumstances might modify or even reverse this label as it applies to Betty? Our empathy and forgiveness are prompted by Betty when he says to Deckard, "Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave." In Blade Runner's unjust and unequal world, slavery is no longer an abomination. In this circumstance, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. This concept helps mediate Betty's crimes. The same excuse cannot be applied to Deckard's transgressions. Despite first seeming to be the film's hero, we are soon repelled by Deckard's immorality. His crimes mean that he too must be labeled a monster. Breaking the 9th commandment, "You shall not bear false witness," Deckard lies his way into the replicant Zora's room in order to retire her, thus breaking the 6th commandment, "You shall not kill." This is not the first time the jaded, albeit reluctant cop has murdered. As his superior testifies, Deckard is a goddamn one-man slaughterhouse. The unanswered question that Deckard himself may be a replicant programmed for violence does not excuse him. But if he is human, this makes him much worse. Sometimes the man is the monster. Deckard also breaks the 10th commandment, "You shall not covet." He desires an experimental replicant, Rachel, who saves his life, but when she rejects him, he commits the cardinal sins of anger and lust, and rapes her. As the film progresses, Deckard is revealed as a complex, changeable character, a mixture of both bad and good. Deckard begins his slow evolution towards inversion when he re-evaluates his condemnation of the so-called skin jobs he is required to exterminate. Descartes develops a conscience and begins to empathize with the replicant. He reacts with emotion after retiring them, but this does not stop him. We see that Descartes is also a slave, trapped by an unjust system, where an all-powerful, profit-motivated company used policemen like him to do its dirty work. The climax of the movie sees both men undergo inversions, reversals, from morally corrupt monsters to find redemption. This takes place when they are locked in a death duel atop one of the city's crumbling skyscrapers. With his superior strength, Betty is destined to win. But as Descartes plummets from the rooftop, Betty reaches down and hauls him to safety. He shows mercy to the man who has killed all his rebel companions and would have dealt him the same fate. With this act of mercy, seeking meaning for his life before he dies, the replicant Betty demonstrates that he is more human than the human Descartes, who would have destroyed him. In this, Betty shows Descartes the cardinal virtue of charity. Thus all his moments will not be lost in time, like tears in rain. And the presumed monster receives absolution. This is confirmed visually in this definitive scene, rich in religious metaphors. Betty's hand is pierced with a nail, a reference to Jesus' crucifixion. In his other hand, he grabs a white dove, symbol of peace. As he whispers, "Time to die." The bird, his soul, soars heavenwards out of the city's perennial darkness. Descartes undergoes a moral reversal because of his life-altering encounter with Betty. He achieves a deeper understanding of who he is and regrets what he was forced to do. Descartes also undergoes an inversion, displaying 3 of the cardinal virtues in his subsequent actions. That of fortitude, when he defies order to kill Rachel, with whom he has fallen in love, and charity and justice, through his determination to protect her and help her flee. As a consequence of this inversion, Descartes' past crimes, too, are redeemed. Through its ambiguous plot and complex characterizations, Blade Runner raises both questions and answers regarding what constitutes a monster. The film demonstrates that through their transgressions and inversions, so-called monsters like Betty and Descartes perform important work for us as individuals and communities, by policing and defining our norms and boundaries. Through their changing and changed values and behaviors, Betty and Descartes inform and reinforce the differences between what it is to be human and inhuman. Betty and Descartes deliver a lesson regarding our own and society's moral judgment. That some of us may be driven beyond our control to commit inhuman yet justifiable crimes. And that a major quality of our own humanity is the ability to experience inversion and reassess what we believe constitutes a monster. To empathize with such an individual's predicament, to understand the force that shaped them, and ultimately, forgive them their transgressions when they seek to reclaim their humanity.